YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. In today's video, I'm going to do an install of an AFE Momentum cold air intake system with the Pro Dry S filter on my C7 Grand Sport. Before we dive into the install video though, I want to take a moment to talk about why I haven't done this sooner and why now is the right time. Way back in 2017, when I got the car, I spent the first several years just getting used to the power, the handling, and learning how the car feels. I slowly dipped my toe into what the car had to offer, and of course didn't want to void the warranty with any sort of mods. After the warranty ran out, I was thinking for a while that I was actually going to sell the car to help fund my C8 Z06 purchase, and a stock car, especially a manual like in this case, is much more likely to fetch a premium over a modded car. Most buyers don't want a story or unanswered questions of what the prior owner did to the car. But that obviously didn't happen, as I decided that I preferred the engagement and fun of the manual over the outright speed of the C8 Z06. So that brings me to where I'm at now. Going into this season, I'm going to be driving the car a lot more than prior years, doing more track days, autocross, and group drives, and I feel it's time to start picking away a little bit at some mods for the car, making it a little more my own. I have some other things on order which will be arriving shortly, and I'll cover those in another video. Lastly, I wanted to say a quick thanks to Horsepower Obsessed for a great video on installing an intake in his C7 Z06, which really showed how easy this is to do. I think my wrenching on the Lemons car also really helped increase my comfort with starting to mod my own car, and it seems like an easy way to start. So let's dive in. All right, so we got our box. We've got our cold air intake for C7 Corvette. Shallow cut so we don't hurt anything inside. All right, what do we got here? Seems pretty well packed. Don't mind my bench here being a bit of a mess. I'm in the midst of a whole bunch of stuff with motorcycles. All right, so got kind of the main housing here. So these are some of the pieces from the Ducati. The bike is all fixed. It's off at the shop for some suspension work. More on that in a different video. Here's the intake tube. Nice. Put this down on the floor so we have a little more space. Got the filter itself. I went with a dry filter. I decided that I didn't want to deal with having an oil one. I'll probably buy a second as a backup, but these are easy to clean and they offer really good particulate protection. So pretty happy with that. We got some hose clamps and fittings. Got kind of a rubber coupler for probably connecting the hose to the main intake. Good old instruction book and probably some stickers and a flyer. And then a license plate frame. Forget if I have a McMulkin one on my car. Maybe I'll replace that. One of the first things you want to do is make sure that all the parts that you received are the parts that are listed that should have shipped. What's really handy here is that each of these things have like a part number, and then they're the biggest thing on any of the parts, so it's really easy to figure out what you have. And so I've already done it, and I've got all the things that they said they are including, so that makes it really nice. All right, I'm ready to get started. So first thing, I got to take the cover off the car. All right, so I've popped the hood and I'm just going to show you a little bit about what we're going to do here. So first thing, we're going to take this intake vent out. This helps route heat up out of the engine after it comes through the radiator. And this is the current air filter, and then you can see there's kind of the coupling and hoses that go to the intake manifold on the top of the engine. So we got a few things to remove first, but that should be pretty easy. So first we're gonna get a 7mm socket to remove a couple bolts here, and we'll get this guy out. All right, there are 4 7mm bolts. There's one here, and then the same 2 on the other side, so we're gonna remove those. All right, now with those screws out, this just lifts up and pops out. Next, we're gonna remove the mass airflow sensor. So this little red tab, you flip that back and you press on this black part in the middle and it pops right off, easy as pie. Next, we're gonna disconnect our vent hose. Some cars have 2, my car only has 1, so I just pull up on it, easy as pie. Next, we're gonna disconnect the hose clamps. So there's one here, and there's one right here, and that's gonna allow us to pull, this whole assembly out. All right, now that these are loose, you wanna get in here, just sort of break the seal here and back these off. That way we can remove the whole coupling. So there's one. And now, there's 2. This has not been off the car since I bought it, but we're all set there. You can see how much space that opens up in here. And the new one's basically gonna go from here to here. It's not gonna have all this extra stuff here. So there should be a little bit better airflow just in general for cooling. All right, next, we wanna remove the 2 10mm screws here, right in here, which are holding the stock airbox on the car. So we're gonna loosen those up and pop them out. You'll probably need an extension for your wrench to do that because they're kind of recessed. All right, so I've gotten those screws out. So now, take the stock airbox and just sort of pull up on some of these hoses, get them out of the way. And wiggle this guy a little bit. All right, the key is you sort of twist it a little bit to the side if you don't want to disconnect all these hoses. And there you go. I thought I might have had to take this out, which is the ram that holds the hood up, but I didn't need to. And so you can see, stock air filter, it's actually in pretty good shape. It's pretty clean. You can see our mass airflow sensor right in here. Yeah, overall, not too bad. A little dust on it on the outside, but the inside is spotless. So it's been doing its job, so I'm happy about that. Next, we're gonna remove the 3 grommets from the stock air filter, right over here. And those are actually gonna go in these spots on the new air filter. So we reuse some of the hardware. We're also gonna, in a minute, we're gonna pop the mass airflow sensor off. I got 2 of them out. The top one is the one with the metal collar, and then this bottom one was just sort of a rubber thing. But I'll show you how I did it for the last one, since it's also metal. And the easiest way, take a screwdriver and just gently put it inside, pop the metal core out right here, and then screwdriver in here, and just sort of work it around a little bit. And look, it pops right off. You can pop the metal core back in, and then you're ready to go for the next one. All right, so we've got our 3 grommets here. We got our top, we got our other side, and then we've got the rubber one. Basically, we're gonna just pop these back in these holes. Easiest way definitely is gonna be pull the metal out, slide this in however you can get it in, and then put the metal back in. The screw that goes on the other side has this big collar on it, and that's what's gonna press against this rubber and kind of sandwich everything together. So should be fairly easy. I'm gonna try this left one, but we'll see. Oh yeah, you just sort of work your way around. Get a little closer view of that. And use a little flathead here, just gently. You don't want to put a hole in the rubber, but basically push that through. And we can see the grommet looks good on this side. And so then we push our metal in here, and this is ready to go. Now I'll just repeat for the other two. So this one, kind of the ugly rubber one, that one's gonna be a little bit more of a hassle. Oh, actually not too bad. Just sort of push. I'm gonna raise this up a little so you can see better. Coax it with a screwdriver, just gently. You don't want to put holes in the rubber, but now that's mounted. Collar out of the metal, or rather the collar out of the rubber here. This one might have been over tightened at the factory a little bit. There's a little tear, so just be careful. I'm gonna kind of stuff half the collar in, sort of work our way around, press in with a screwdriver. Now on the back side, you can sort of walk it around. So you can see here, this is now flush. Take our metal, pop that in, and we're good. Now we're going to take our filter here, and push it into this housing. And it just sort of accordions in a little bit. Hard to show on the screen here. But basically, it just sort of fits in this. And so we've got our clamp built right into the housing. And then this is going to fit on the rest of the intake here. So pretty straightforward. I wanted to just show what the two look like side by side so you can see the difference in the size of the expansion chambers over here on the stock one, and then obviously the new one is a little bit smaller. It also feels quite a bit lighter, so probably some improvement there. The stock one, this whole section is like a rubberized plastic, kind of that coupling, and then this is just going to have, and then this one is just going to have kind of this rubber coupling here. So the rubber feels quite a bit heavier than the hard plastic here. So just interesting to see. All right, now we're going to take our airbox. We're going to fit it in here. And so we're going to kind of do the reverse of what we did before. We're going to lift up these hoses and kind of snake it in underneath everything. Oh, hose clamp came off. But this is basically going to fit right in here. So the directions say to have the filter in when you mount it into the car, but I wanted to be sure I was getting a good seal on the bottom underneath. So I popped the filter out, and I'm gonna just put this on kind of loose at first. And then that way, I'm sure, see how there's like a very specific way that this fits. There we go. And I just wanna get it snug-ish, so it can't fall back out, and then I'll pop the filter in. All right, this took a little bit longer than expected. This screw was just fine, not hard to put in. This one was a heck of a time putting it in. It's hard to see because of the lighting here, but that screw, it's a 10mm screw. It is just a really tough angle, and the screw has to be pretty deeply seated before it'll catch the threads. I'd say it took me a half hour to try and get that to work. I wish there was a little bit longer screw included with the product, but now I've got this on. It's solid, so we're gonna continue. All right, so we're taking the actual filter. We're gonna stick that in the housing. I think it's easier to do it after you mount the housing, but your mileage may vary, but that's all there is to it. And what you can see is that there's this handy little sight window here. Let me turn off my headlamp. There's a handy little sight window here so that you can see how clean your filter is without actually having to like pull everything apart. So next we're gonna screw this air fitting into here. There's only one on my car, though they have openings for two. And that is what this plug is for. I'm going to use blue Loctite just to make sure that they don't fall out. And looking at the stock one, you can see that of the two spots where there could be a sensor or an opening, mine's on the front, so I'm going to do the same up here. I've got two openings, and I'm going to put mine in here. So that's the next step. So it's hard to see, but the black fitting that I just put in, as well as this brass one, they're slightly tapered, and so you only put them in until they're firm. You don't want to over torque them. And what you'll notice is that there's a gap between the bottom of that kind of looks like a nut, but it's part of the fitting, and the bottom. That's normal. The directions even say as much. So just something to keep in mind. But you'll see with this one, okay, it's part way in, and now it's starting to get firm. So I'm just going to give it just a little bit, 2 fingers worth of tightness. And it's Loctited with blue, so that'll stay nice and firm. That'll seal off. Nothing to worry about there. And this one, I went as tight as I can go with my hand, just to make sure that there's a seal, and that's good enough. So that's, I mean, there's no way that there's going to be anything slipping by that bolt. Plus, it was blue Loctited as well. All right, next we're going to take the mass airflow sensor off of the old intake. So we're just going to unscrew it, and then we're going to mount it in the new one. All right, so there's one. Oop. These are really tiny little screws. There we go. All right. There's 2. Wiggle this guy loose, and here's our little sensor. All right, so we're going to put our mass airflow sensor in. Make sure that the plug is towards the top, and also make sure that this gasket right here, you can see I'm just peeling it up a little bit. Make sure that gasket is clean. I went around it with a microfiber cloth. So we're going to just slide this bad boy in. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on these screws. They're a Torx screw, and they're machined for the brass fittings that they go into. So we'll take this, put it on the bit. There we go. All right, next we've put our kind of silicone coupling in the 2 hose clamps on here. We've got our sensor in here, as you can see, and we've got our little air tube that we added, plus the set screw. So the next step is we're gonna slide this in here, and first you want to attach it to the air filter, and then we'll add it into the main pipe. So you want to sort of wiggle it in. All right, this is also a little harder than it looked online. The best way to do it, I found, was to put the silicone coupling and these 2 clamps on here first. Not tight, you don't tighten anything down. Then slide the main kind of filter tube into the filter, and then this sort of wiggle it around and just sort of twist back and forth a little bit as you're going along. I even found that taking a flathead screwdriver and sticking it under the rubber and kind of working it around just helped to get a seal all the way around and get it to go around this tube. But now it's in, so I gotta tighten that stuff up, so that's next. So I realized I actually forgot to put one of the clamps on only after I pulled the car back in the garage. So you'll see right here, this clamp wasn't in the car. I had this one, and I was thinking about it, I was like, how is this gonna stay in there? I just need to tighten this down, but I was able to loop it through by just pulling the bolt off. I went back to my bench at the end, and I saw the part sitting on the bench, so happens to the best of us. I thought I was following all the directions. Clearly I missed a step. Anyway, I'm gonna tighten that up, and then we should be all set. All right, so this, and this are all tight. Next step, connect our little coupling, and then the mass airflow filter, or mass airflow sensor, sorry. So you press it over, and then you press that little tab, and And everything is nice and tight. All right, the last technical step is reinstalling the radiator inlet kind of bodywork / routing stuff. So it's 4 screws here, so I'm going to do that, and then there's one last thing. All right, that is tightened up. Now everything is in. You can see it's a fair bit less bulky. I can actually see some of the other lines and things for the brake controller a little further down. So normally this whole area was filled in with the air intake. So looks pretty good. Everything's nice and solid. Nothing can move. So now to the last step. So the last thing we want to do is we want to start the engine and make sure there's no check engine lights. Make sure the sensor was reconnected okay. And then we're good. All right, so neutral. Hood's open. Yep, I didn't latch it. I just wanted it down in case the garage door was anywhere near close to it. So we'll dismiss that.
This vehicle is connected by OnStar to limited services.
No check engine lights. That sounds good. Everything looks good. There were no check engine lights. All the plugs and everything are in good. So yeah, we're looking good. That's looking pretty good. All right, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, Fred out.